Hi, I'm Justin Willoughby, and I'd like to introduce to you Neil Brennan. And Neil's a blogger and a writer for tasteofthewoods.com. And he's all the way here from Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And so he has some pretty cool things to talk to us about tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, Neil Brennan.
Thank you, Justin. Hi, my name is Neil Brennan, and I am a writer and blogger and outdoors person, and the proprietor of A Taste for the Woods. I'm here to talk to you about the outdoors being for everyone. Now, I have a confession to make. This is actually my first public speaking engagement, so I hope that you'll bear with me if I seem a little, I don't know, maybe out of ease at times or not sufficiently polished. But, so I hope that you'll bear with me on that. However, it's occurred to me that being out of ease or, unpolished or not, quite fitting, being perfect, is sort of the way that many people feel about the outdoors. We have an ideal in mind for what an active person is supposed to be. The media reinforces that, not just popular media, but also even specific outdoor media. I mean, for instance, you can even pick up, say, a copy of Bicycling Magazine, which is a publication actually produced here in Pennsylvania. And 11 times out of 12, what you're going to see on the cover is a 23-year-old standing out of the saddle riding on his road bike. Now, that's not the reality for most of us. Most people are not quite, not all 23. I'm certainly not. I don't know about you. We might have some 23-year-olds here tonight, but I don't see them. Anyway, I apologize again for not necessarily being terribly polished about that, but it's not really anything that needs apology, especially when it comes to the outdoors. The outdoors is for everyone. It was created for all of us. Now, whether or not you happen to believe that there is a creator out there, I do. This is a wonderful world around us. I'm not speaking specifically of Bradford, but again, if we were talking specifically about Bradford, you're surrounded by marvelous forest, mountains, and stream, any of which you can explore, and that is out there for you. Unfortunately, too many people feel that the outdoors is not for them. And I want to share a couple of examples of people who decided otherwise, and I'll do that tonight. Now, weight loss is apparently a hot topic here in Bradford this week. So I'm going to give my weight loss story, and it doesn't reflect on anybody else's who may have lost less or considerably more. Let's roll back the clock to 2005, December of that year. I was 400 pounds or more. I didn't have an exact reading because I didn't get on a scale. All I know is I had a 60-some inch waist, and I could not walk a city block. I went home from work one day and had chest pain. Now, silly me thought, all right, I'll go and get this checked out, and then the hospital will simply send me home with an aspirin tablet or something like that, I should have stepped back and thought, middle-aged man, super obese, chest pain, we're admitting him. So I was admitted. That was the moment I started to turn my life around. They tried to put me in oxygen. I don't know about the people here, but I know that for myself, I had no experience with hospitals. I didn't think that was a common thing to do. All I knew was that in television and in movies, when they put someone on oxygen, they never come off it. You know, I could see at that moment when they were going to try to put me on oxygen that there was a row of hospital gurneys, all of which had my name on them, because that's what I would be doing for the rest of my life. Before they did that, they had checked the oxygen content of my blood, and they'd found that it was below a certain level. I told them, please retest it. And I don't know how I managed to do it, but I got the level above the minimum required to be on O2. That was the moment that my life began to turn. That was the moment that I thought there was something worth fighting for in me. I still spent the night hooked up to all sorts of tubes. They gave me a stress test the next morning. They couldn't administer the stress test properly. I was in such poor physical condition, they didn't want me to walk. Instead, they injected me with a chemical that simulated the effect of exercise. They did send me home with some general advice to lose weight and a hefty hospital bill. Some things never change. And however, I did eventually change. I started a gym. Now, this was January, mind you. So there were 49,999,000 other people that were joining a gym that same first week. And this was just in Valley Forge. I can see this is a tough house. All right. I stuck with it. I found only one thing I could do. I spent 7 minutes on a recumbent exercise bike. I worked that thing. I was dripping in sweat. I couldn't move anything else afterwards, but I felt so good from being in physical movement, I decided that I could come back and I could get 8 minutes the next time. It became a duel between myself and this odd-looking machine that looked like the wrong side of the blanket spawn between a bicycle and a lawn chair. I kept on working at it. Eventually, I got to the point that I found out that there was a whole world outside the gym that I could explore. Again, this had been shut off to me. I had gotten so sedentary through my life, through being as super obese as I was, that I couldn't even, by 2005, I couldn't even play chess. Yes, sitting at a board, moving little wooden pieces around, exhausted me. What happened, though, is that, again, through the magic of applying myself, the basic formula, which never changes, which is eat less and better and move, I wound up losing 160 pounds over the course of 18 months. After the first 100 or so, I decided that I was going to teach myself to ride a bicycle. I'd never done that before. I never did it as a child because I was always a fat kid, and fat kids apparently never rode bikes. So I didn't know any better, so I simply bought a bike and went out to try to teach myself. And I've discovered that it's not quite the same thing to learn to do something at the age of 40 that it is to do at 8. There's some things that children do more gracefully than adults, believe it or not. One of which is wobble when you ride and fall when you avoid hitting the mailbox. I have to admit I'm a little dismayed that Pennsylvania does not have a leash law on mailboxes. These things just jump out at you. Governor Corbett, please, we need something. We need some rule, some law here. Get the House together to vote on this thing. Talk about a tough house. All right. Well, anyway, in the course of this, I made some alarming discoveries about, while I was just rediscovering the outdoors myself, I made some alarming discoveries about the way other people view the outdoors. For instance, Bill Bryson wrote a marvelous book called A Walk in the Woods, which was about his attempt to hike the Appalachian Trail. If you don't have that book, I suggest you read it. It's very funny, but there is a extremely powerful comment in there, and it's stuck me ever since I've read it. By the way, this book was published in the late 90s, and I can't imagine that the statistic has improved, but the average American walks 1 mile a week, and that's in the course of their daily activities. That includes walking around your home, at your job, in the supermarket, Zippo, wherever else you would normally go. I find that an alarming statistic. We all walk because there are things we need to do, but there are so many other places to walk to. I pride myself then that on an average hike, I do as much walking as at least the average American does in a month or more. Sometimes in a week, I may do easily months worth of walking. For the average American. But it's not just walking. The average bicycle in the U.S. gets ridden less than 10 miles a year. Bikes look fine in a garage, but that's not what a bike is meant for. There's a whole world out there to explore. And it's not just one particular group. There are, this is spread among all groups, ages, all demographics you would like. It's especially alarming with certain groups, though. For instance, people over 45, 2/3 of Americans over 45 spend no time at all in the course of a year doing anything in the outdoors. And the statistic they define is 30 minutes or more of physical activity. 2/3 of Americans over 45. I'm 48. I'm making up far too much of that difference there. Anyway, one thing I did with creating the website, Taste for the Woods, is, well, there are two reasons. One is, I'm going to confess, it's vanity. You will not find a writer that doesn't have vanity in their soul. I know it's a sin, but I'm sorry. I wanted a home to put my outdoor writing. It originally started as that purpose, and I've been busy at it. But it's come to fill another role as well, and that is we need to promote the outdoors for people who are not naturally outdoors people who may have been discouraged from doing that, people who may have thought the outdoors is not for them. Now, I'd spoken with a radio interviewer yesterday who mentioned that she thought that people came up with excuses to not do things in the outdoors. I don't think it's a matter of excuses. I think that people simply, are taught the outdoors is not for them. Whether it was, the 400-pound me, or the 800-pound Mr. Willoughby, or, someone who is in a wheelchair, someone who is elderly, someone who has some other physical impairment. I want to discuss a couple of my friends who defy this expectation and do realize that the outdoors is for them and how they apply these things. One is, I'll start with a friend of mine in Ohio, very dear woman named Beverly. Beverly is 72. She is herself a weight loss success story. She has, and as a matter of fact, leads Weight Watchers sessions. She's been at her goal weight for a quarter century now. That is in itself an impressive statistic. What she does to remain fit and to also remain mentally fit as well is she leads bicycling groups. In Ohio, the local county parks are referred to as metro parks. So she is active in her local metro park. She leads rides there regularly. She credits that with not only helping to keep her weight down and keep her physically in top condition, but also mentally. Don't ever believe that the elderly do not think about Alzheimer's from time to time. Beverly has, and research backs this up, that remaining physically active helps keep you mentally active. She is sharp as a tack and extremely fit. Another example that comes to mind, this is going to be someone who is going to be hiking with me on my second backpacking trip, is my friend Adam. Adam is an experienced backpacker. He's a young man, very physically fit, has already section hiked part of the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania, and has MS. He had a choice when he was diagnosed. He could wind up like most people with MS, or what society says most people with MS should do, which is basically just sit in a corner somewhere until the disease has its full effect and takes them. Or he could do what Adam is doing, which is to take charge of his life and be as active as he is physically able to. Now, any condition requires you to make adaptations. Just as, for instance, a person who is overweight who needs to ride a bicycle might make adjustments to the bike to fit them that a thinner rider wouldn't need, or a person who, say, has diminished lung capacity might change their way of hiking or walking or swimming or whatever to accommodate that. Adam has to make adjustments as well, since he can have neuropathy develop at any time. His MS symptoms become worse at times during hot weather. However, on Saturday, I'm going backpacking with him. We're doing a short backpacking trip because that is my second one. We're camping together. I'm going back to my car alone. He's going on to Maine. I really think he's going to get there, simply because he's determined. And also, he knows that the outdoors is for him. He and Beverly and myself all credit the outdoors not only with helping to keep us physically fit, but also mentally fit and spiritually fit as well. Now, I've mentioned that spirituality. I happen to be a Christian. I believe God has created the world for us. Even if you don't believe that there's a creator, again, there's all this around us, and it is for you. I touch on faith at times on my blog, but it's not specifically a Christian blog. Again, the outdoors is for everyone, regardless of your faith. Now, I've mentioned a couple people. I also have a friend, Michael. He is, unlike the other two, he's actually an athlete. He races professionally and does these Spartan type races, these endurance obstacle races, the kind of thing where you have to slog through the mud and then climb over a wall and whatnot. And he does very well with them, especially when you consider that he's in a wheelchair and has been since the age of 16. Michael is exceptionally determined. He is determined to be as active as possible. Again, you don't think that people in wheelchairs can go out and do things. His most famous stunt is climbing Stone Mountain in Georgia, which is a mountain that overlooks the city of Atlanta. It's comparable in height to some of our ones around here. It's a little different than most of our hills. When we here who live in Rocksylvania know that basically our mountains are scree and they're places where boots go to die. Stone Mountain is a bit smoother, so he can roll his wheelchair up part way. when he gets to the part that he can't roll up any further, he gets out and crawls. I'm not saying everyone has to have that degree of determination, that anyone has to be that extreme, push themselves that far. The point is you don't need to, though. Again, all of this is around us. It's all out there for our taking. And one thing I plan to do with the website is not just feature my writing, my voice, but also that of other people, people like Beverly, people like Adam, people like Michael, other people involved in the outdoors. Not just their stories, but also practical advice. Ways to help them because, let's face it, the deck is stacked against many of us. I myself found this out only a month or so ago when I went to a major outdoor retailer to purchase a backpack for my first backpacking trip. The store manager himself waited on me, who proceeded to tell me that I was too fat to safely backpack, that a manufacturer would not make a pack that would fit around my, all right, I'll disclose it, 48-inch waist, and that even if I did, it wouldn't fit right and I could hurt myself and damage internal organs. So not only is he telling me no, he's also diagnosing me. Needless to say, I went to a different store where they treated me fully professionally and they found me something, but I didn't know any better when this happened. When he first told me, my hopes were dashed, I thought. Then I realized there has to be more than that out there. There has to be a definitive answer. I shouldn't just rely on someone acting as a gatekeeper, trying to keep the outdoors from me. I found, I did asking around, but there's no good resource on that. I hope to fill that gap. I've actually reached out to a company here in Pennsylvania, Wild Asaph Outfitters in Wellsboro, to speak with them about what's involved with fitting a larger than normal size person for a backpack. Again, it's not just a matter of my writing to put my voice out there, but it's also filling a need so that we can make the outdoors for everyone, so that people can find the information they need, regardless of what they look like, regardless of their abilities, regardless of their challenges. I've also approached a bicycle shop that happens to be the one that has sold me all of my bikes, Bike Sport in Trapp, Pennsylvania. I am going to be working with them as well to get information on bicycles, not just for larger size individuals, but also for individuals who may have a problem. For instance, they don't have full use of one hand. Bikes are extremely adaptable. I didn't know till I asked that you can actually move the brake levers both brake levers onto one side. Or you can you can adjust, you can make all sorts of adjustments to fit whatever physical requirements need to be made. But again, this isn't information that you can readily find out there. I hope to have that out there. I have a series of articles on teaching yourself how to ride a bike because I couldn't find anything on self-teaching out there, so I wrote it myself using my own experiences. I hope to actually partner with Bike Sport and see if they'll hold a class to teach people so that it's not just a matter of putting words out there on a page, but also so that we can put them to practical use. These are all goals that I have for the website. Now, of course, me being me, there's going to be some funny stories on there. I'm told I have to tell about my meeting a resident of the Bradford area last night and this morning. And I'm going to do that because that also illustrates one reason that I think the site is needed. Because if we restrict, if we restrict the outdoors to people who are extremely fit, you don't find these stories. People can't relate to them. A century ago, everybody they made their own entertainment. They went out and did things. We've now become a culture where people consume things. We consume the outdoors by reading about them. We don't go out and do them. And frankly, a somewhat inexperienced, formerly sedentary man rediscovering the outdoors relates more to you and me than whoever the latest super athlete is, published in Outside or Bicycling or any of these other magazines. So let me get to the story about my meeting the resident of Willow Bay. I was camping, and I've been camping for 2 weeks now in Pennsylvania, and I had spent 2 nights at Willow Bay, which is 15 miles from here, on the Allegheny Reservoir. And I decided I wanted to camp in New York State so I could write about the campgrounds in New York State. I'd never been to Allegheny State Park, so I went up there and registered. I asked a question about bears, and I got the same general, advice everyone gives: don't leave food out, don't feed them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't think anything of it. I went to get rid of my refuse at one of their dumping stations, and I was advised by the person in charge there that the bears break into cars. Now, I've been on the road for 2 weeks now. I have been carrying my tent, which has been wet every single night, my hiking boots, which I simply, out of squeamishness, I won't describe, my poles, which have picked up any number of dirt, laundry that really needs to be done, and more food than perhaps I should be carrying. At this point in this Pennsylvania heat, my entire car is like an overripe burrito. And now I'm going to be camping in a park where the bears don't respect private property and break into automobiles. No, I thought no. So I'm going to drive from Quaker Run the 20-some miles south to Willow Bay where they don't have such problems. I arrived late at night, and there was a thunderstorm brewing. I got into the campground just before they closed. I thought, all right, I'm not going to go out in the thunderstorm and set up my tent, I'm going to sleep in the front seat of the car. So I pushed back the seat as far as it would go and reclined and attempted to sleep while the thunder raged around me. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm sort of half awake. I'm just sort of rolling around, and I hear a really odd sound coming from the passenger side of the car. Now, the windows were rolled up, and they were a little fogged, but I could still see out of them. So even in my half-awake state, I turned over, and I saw this. I screamed. I turned the ignition on, and my 4-footed friend ran into the bushes. I drove to the only place in the campground that had Wi-Fi service, which happened to have been the check-in booth at the front of it, and sat there for 2.5 hours with the motor running, because if I was going to be eaten by a bear, I wanted the internet to know about it. Obviously, I wasn't eaten by the bear. By the way, keep in mind, this also occurred on the morning of the same day that I'm giving my first public speaking engagement. So, obviously, sleep is not terribly important if you're a public speaker, because I'm functioning fine without it. Eventually, I did get back into the campground and did set up my tent and did sleep for a couple hours, and then got up again and went to the shower house, and lo and behold, who jumps in front of me but my friend from last night? And it turns out they have problem bears there too. Now, the important thing is not that I'm okay, not that the bear didn't have any trouble, but that I've recovered enough that this will make one heck of a blog post. So, again, it's not a matter of being perfect. It's a matter of showing that you're simply out there participating, and maybe people can learn from my mistakes. The backpacking trip was another one. My first backpacking trip was last week. I went out with my friend Ian and the noble hound Baxter. Ian was excited for the trip. I don't know about Baxter because he's a dog. But we went out on the Loyalsock Trail, which is in the Loyalsock Forest, which is about 2.5 hours east of Bradford. Now, I discovered afterwards that Loyalsock is not a reference to the fidelity to anything to do with anyone's feet. It's a Native American term. I don't know what it means. It probably means trail that is harder than you'll expected. We wound up cutting the trip short. I didn't drink enough water. I made 100 mistakes probably, maybe even 1,000. Who knows? We lost count. Ian and I both, seemed to have a good time afterwards. Baxter, again, I don't know, but he's a dog. Who cares? But anyway, the point is that I went out there and participated. I didn't let what my weight is supposed to have me do, which basically means sit around and watch TV. I went out and was active. I didn't let what a major retailer tried to do, which was keep the outdoors from me. I went ahead and did it. And that's what the whole site is about. It's about going out and doing things. That's why I am writing it. That's why I'm glad it's up there. And that's why I'm very pleased that we actually have moved to our own URL now, which is atasteforthewoods.com. And hopefully we will continue to prove that the outdoors is for everyone. Do we have any questions? Yes, the lady in the back.
What do you typically do in the winter? Does that set you back usually, or do you still try to get out there?
Well, I had my knees replaced 2 years ago, and that slowed me down a bit because for the first year afterwards, I developed an enormous sensitivity to cold. I don't know why. I had some complications with my surgery. That could have been it. But last year, I went out hiking in it. As a matter of fact, I went out hiking on the Appalachian Trail in a foot of snow. Now, that wasn't necessarily the wisest thing I've ever done, but it was certainly a heck of a lot of fun. It was a relatively short stretch, but I'm not bicycling in the freezing weather because the idea of keeping balanced on ice on 2 wheels, not for me. The outdoors is for everyone, but not everything in the outdoors is for everyone. So I'm going to pass on that one. But hiking, I certainly do. It's simply a matter of dressing for the weather and dressing for conditions. Yes, the tall gentleman with the hat.
You may want to repeat my question so that it picks up because the mic won't. But I just wanted to ask, of all the places in Pennsylvania that you have visited to do an outdoor activity, what do you think is your favorite so far?
That's a tough question because I tend to find something I like in each one. I have to admit that my all-time favorite, it remains Pine Creek Gorge. There is a story behind that as well. As I've mentioned, I am a Christian. But Pine Creek Gorge is the first time I've actually seen something in nature and spontaneously broke into prayer on seeing it. And that was a Sunday morning at Colton Point State Park. I had seen photos of the canyon, but I'd never actually seen it myself. And I just drove up to the overlook, and I was alone that day on just me and all of creation around me. And I just spontaneously broke into prayer that I was allowed to experience such a world. So Pine Creek Gorge is probably my favorite. Allegheny National Forest would be a close contender if it weren't for some of the residents that I met last night. World's End State Park is spectacular. Ricketts Glen with all the waterfalls. is fantastic. There are many smaller places too. I gave a radio interview yesterday where we talked extensively about the duck pond on 346. That was a charming place. Anyway, it's not just major places. Everyone thinks about going to big places. Small places are oftentimes fascinating. Near me in Valley Forge, there was a place I didn't even know existed called the Freedoms Foundation. They actually are a civics organization, but they have what they call the Medal of Honor Grove, which has a mile-long trail winding through a forest with markers and monuments devoted to winners of the Medal of Honor, oftentimes referred to as the Congressional Medal of Honor. It's the same award. And I visited that on Memorial Day, and I was tremendously moved. Yes, Valley Forge is a spectacular park, but the Freedoms Foundation is just a couple miles away. People don't go there, and it's pretty nice. Again, you can find all sorts of interesting small places that you can make your own, because everyone goes to people who do go out to go to the big places. They all think, the Allegheny National Forest or whatever. They don't think, for instance, your wonderful reservoir at Marilla, which is one of the nicest places to go through. In particular, all those old pines. Have I answered the question, or? I'm sorry if I go on. Again, I'm new to this, so. Do we have other questions? Gentleman in front here.
Yeah, how would you describe your experience as a believer? Do you feel like you make, when you're out in the woods or you're in the outdoors, you feel like you make some kind of spiritual connection, and which I think you do, but if so, how would you kind of describe that, let's say, to someone who's an atheist? How would you describe your outdoor experience that kind of connects you spiritually to God?
All right, that's a very interesting question. And I have friends who are not believers, who may not be Christian, they may not be even theists, and they oftentimes report that they have some sort of connection of some kind, not specifically Christian, but some sort of spiritual essence from being in the outdoors. I remember one friend. I remember one of my posts on tasteforthewoods.com was visiting Nescopec State Park, and I commented that I saw the face of God in water. And someone said, I'm not a believer, but I do believe that when you're out in nature, there is some sort of spiritual force there. So I'm not sure, am I quite answering your question, or I'm...
How do you experience it for yourself?
Well, that I am... It's an interesting question. Let me see if I can parse that a little bit here. When I'm out, obviously I'm aware that God has created the heavens and the earth, that He has given those to us. I'm not sure that there's anything more specific I need to, know about that to feel that. I mean, and again, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on a point of doctrine here, but I'm not aware that that Christ spoke, for instance, on environmentalism particularly. All right, I apologize if that was a little out of line, but again, I don't think that there's any deep or specific thought that comes to mind. Just the gladness that God has created the world and that I am here to experience it. Because again, I could have died, if I'd remained on the course I was on back in December 2005. I would have been, I would have died. I would have been one of those people that they have to cut out of the wall, to have the wall cut out to get them out of their room. I couldn't walk a city block. My cholesterol limits were, horrible. It'd be sooner or later before everything else went. So I feel grateful for the second, and now having my knees replaced, the third chance I've been given. Did that answer your question, or do we have any other questions? Don't be shy, please.
Have you ever seen any other interesting wildlife other than your bear visitor?
Ah, yes, I have seen. Well, let's see. Rattlesnake, swifts. I don't mean Taylor Swift. I mean the kind that are, nesting at Marilla. Yeah, there's far too much Taylor Swift around anyway. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Taylor, are you in the house? I apologize.
She could make it.
All right. Yes. Yeah. She and other people, in the area. Well, a rat snake that looked like a rattlesnake that I just saw at a place called the Thousand Steps in central Pennsylvania. Fish, duck, an enormous beaver at Marilla, chipmunks, squirrels. I don't know. Bald eagles. I have seen bald eagles, and again, if I were not active, I wouldn't have been able to see them because they're not birds that tend to hang around, supermarkets and things like that. The only place I'd ever see them would be on TV. But instead, I've seen them. Even in Oil Creek State Park, I was riding on the bike trail there a few years ago. And I was riding back to my car, and I go around the bend, and there by the pond on the bike trail is an enormous bald eagle in the iconic pose with its head cocked over its shoulder. And it saw me, and it took off, and I nearly fell off because I had no idea those birds are so big. It's an enormous bird. And of course, it was far faster than my camera was, so I wasn't going to spill, to spill on the ground while I was trying to take a photo while riding. So by the time I dismounted, the thing was long gone. But still, it's one of those thrilling experiences that I would only have experienced by having made a change and realizing the outdoors was for me. Is that enough of one, or should I could talk for hours about animals. As a matter of fact, we have a whole subset on the website about encounters with animals. The elk was an interesting story. I went to the elk courtship, shall we say, in Elk County a couple years ago. And I witnessed one of the grandest courtships in the course of nature and made the mistake of using the word rut in front of my 7-year-old niece. Now, of course, being a 7-year-old, her first question is, "What does that mean, Uncle Neil?" And I realized I was in an awkward predicament because I didn't want to, ask your mother or father because they'd want to know why I was talking about such things with my niece. So I said, the elk were getting married. Married? You mean like mommy and daddy? Oh, I hope not. I hope not. So I had to give details of an elk wedding, which is, is an experience in fiction writing, let me tell you. I explained that the male elk, and they fight for the female elk, but sometimes the female elk isn't ready to, settle down and have children. She wants to have a career first. So she turns them aside, or maybe they just want to be friends, sort of like all the women I date. But anyway, that seemed to satisfy her until I got to the point where she asked what elk do for a living, and I said lawn care, because all they do is eat the grass in Benezet. All of Elk County has these 700 elk running around, and you think deer are a problem? You imagine walking in and finding 3 elk eating all the grass in your lawn. Well, fortunately, she realized that I'm the silly uncle and left it at that. So,
I just want to know,
okay.
the elk wedding, who was the best man? Bullwinkle?
I don't know, actually. And actually, very few people would find out who the best man is at the elk wedding, because when the people would bring their children to see the bugling and the horn, when the elk run at each other, and you can hear those horns clash, But when the elk have selected their mates, oddly enough, all the people that brought their children quickly marched them out. I was stunned. But anyway, so I don't know about the elk wedding. Bullwinkle was a moose anyway.
I know. Good thing I can come up with.
All right.
Hey, did you do any training, like for survival skills, or did you kind of learn as you went, or did you have to ever use any survival skills?
Have I ever been in a position where I've had to fight for my life? Is that what you're asking? No, I'm not. I have been in positions where I've recognized that I've done things I ought not to, and I've tried to be careful. For instance, I have a habit of not eating and drinking properly before going on long hikes or rides. That can produce a problem. You get dehydrated. If you're dehydrated and don't have enough nutrition, you can make bad decisions. Other than that, no, I've been fairly good. I've tried to. While I'm not one to push specific clothing on people, for instance, look, I'm wearing cotton. What outdoorsman wears cotton? All the magazines tell us cotton kills. Well, no, for the average person, cotton is perfectly fine, and I have no objection to people wearing that if they're comfortable with it. I happen to think for more strenuous things, synthetic fabrics, work well, but still, that's a choice an individual makes. I do try to exercise some, if I'm climbing up something rocky, I'm not wearing sandals. I'll wear boots. I see people wearing, flip-flops or things like that, climbing up around waterfalls. I'm sorry, slate and water, that means wet slate, which means slipping. You want something that has a grip to it. Don't bring your little children to climb these rocky trails or whatever. Exercise some care. Again, the outdoors is for all of us, but it's such a vast place. There's options for everybody. Do we have other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. You've been a wonderful audience. I hope that you will continue to read our site and comment, and follow along my journey and that of other people who post to A Taste for the Woods. Because remember that we are trying to prove that the outdoors is for everyone, not just any specific individual. It is all of our world. Let's all enjoy it. Thank you.
Confess your love, as well as your folly, and can you kneel before the King and say, I'm clean?